So central idea today is this: one single move and you can level up. One single move and you can level up. Now this term level up, it is used in a variety of ways in our culture, but it started off originally as a gamer term. And it's when a gamer, video game player, you can tell I don't play video games, has earned enough experience or acquired a new level of skills, and they get better weapons, new places, and better assignments. And I don't know about you, but I would like some better places, spaces, and assignments in my life. Like, I want to level up. I don't think God intends for us to just kind of stay on this flat line. I think his intent is that we would level up. That there are places God wants to take you. There are some new assignments. There are new levels of anointing that he wants to work in you for the purpose of working through you. And so, today, we're going to get into the one move that can help you level up. And the reason I'm excited about this message is because I know if you get this, like if you can have the humility to receive this, it really does have the potential to alter your future. And so I try to be very careful with my words when it comes to preaching. I don't always do that in my life, so I think I need to learn in my life how to do that when I do my preaching. And so I would not say this about every sermon. Like I get annoyed when I see a preacher on Instagram and they go, "This is going to be the best sermon ever." I'm like, well, you said that last week and then the previous week and then the previous week. I don't say that about every message, but I do think about this. It is true. I do think with this does have the potential to really change your future for the better. But it's going to require a certain posture. The Greek philosopher Socrates is known for many things, but one of the things he's known for is his Socratic paradoxes. And one of the most famous one of all time, you probably know it, for some of you it's going to take you back to your college or high school philosophy class. He said, "All I know is I know nothing." Some of you know that phrase. And it's an interesting statement because it's coming from one of history's most influential and important philosophers. But here was the meaning for Socrates, is that he doubted his own wisdom's superiority over the wisdom of everyone else. He also graduated too. School of Hard Knocks, but same thing. But he doubted his wisdom's superiority, even though this is a true authority over everybody else. And here's what it did for him. It created a posture of humility that he could always grow. He could be wrong, even in things that he was previously certain in. And I think to level up in this, you have to have that kind of posture. So we are leaving summer. And many of you had your last recent beach trip or beach vacation. You had to get that last one in before the busyness of the fall and school and everything going on. And here's the best thing about a beach trip. I think the absolute best thing is you sit on the beach. You ready for this? You do nothing. You do nothing. You just sit there and you stare at the ocean, But one of the things I have found, and this probably resonates with you too, is that some of the best conversations I've had have been on a beach staring at the ocean. And so if you and I were to take a beach trip, obviously we would go to the west side, not the east side. Hello, somebody. But if we were to take a trip and we were to sit down and stare at the waves, this is probably the first thing I would want to have a conversation with you about. Because I have seen time and time again in a variety of relationships, areas of life, work, list goes on and on. Good people fail, good people miss out because they didn't level up in this one area. But this single step, it can change your relationships. And I think it can change how much you enjoy life. I don't know about you, but I'd like to enjoy life a little bit more. So we'll be all over the Bible today, but our main teaching text is going to come from the book of Proverbs, chapter 14, and we're looking at verses 29 through 30. And so it says this: "Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly. A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot. One single move, you can level up. The move is navigating your anger. And I'm very purposely saying the word navigating your anger, because we'll get into this in a moment. But you have anger. I need you to look at me for a moment. You have anger. Some of you have a lot. Some of you have a little. Some of you explode when you're angry. Some of you, you seep in it, like a tea that gets too bitter. And some of you right now are convinced when I first said that, you're like, not me, I don't have anger. Okay. But you have a level of anger unless there's one little caveat. You're dead. If you're not dead, which I don't think anyone is, then you have anger. And here's why. Because at its core, anger is actually a good emotion. Anger is not a bad emotion. And we're going to get into that. At its core, it is a good emotion. But here's the tension. How do I keep my anger as a good emotion? So we all have anger. You're not alone. And I think it's the one emotion that influences way more than we think it actually does. It's also a very misunderstood emotion. So here's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to do 3 basic things with anger. We're going to look at its dangerous power, basic goodness, and why it goes awry. So its dangerous power, its basic goodness, and why it goes awry. So first, its dangerous power. Tim Keller, he uses this analogy for anger. He says anger is the dynamite of the soul. It's the dynamite of the soul. Because what does dynamite do? Well, when dynamite is lit, it has the power to disintegrate things. So it takes what is whole and it breaks it, it shatters it into pieces. Anger does the exact same thing. And I want to show you some of the places that anger breaks. First, it's your body. The first place anger breaks is your body. Your body cannot compartmentalize. We think we can, but we are fooling ourselves. You can't separate the effects of emotions from your physical body. You're not disembodied. You're whole. And good emotions, they're going to affect your body in very positive ways. So as we end service today, and we're walking out, someone goes up to Aaron and goes, "Aaron, you've been working out? Got some nice guns there." That is going to release oxytocin. If someone comes up to PJ and goes, "I heard that you have been crushing your drives, hitting them 300 yards. Someone get this guy a tour card." Like, it's going to release oxytocin. And if somebody comes up to me after service and goes, "Man, is your hair getting thicker?" Oh, bless you, saints. I need whatever oil was in Aaron's beard to drip down on me. But the opposite is also true. If someone were to say something cruel or mean, it would also release things in your body, adrenaline. And the worst of all emotions for our body, it's not worry, it's not anxiety, and it's not even close. It's anger, by far. Anger is dynamite to your body. Anger causes headaches, digestive problems, insomnia, anxiety, depression, skin problems. It has also been known to lead to more deadly things like a heart attack or stroke. And there have been multiple studies that nothing sets you up for a heart attack like issues with anger. Like, even when people work themselves to a point of exhaustion, that's still not more dangerous than anger. One professor at Harvard Medical, he put it like this: anger causes an outpouring of stress hormones like adrenaline, which makes your heart beat faster, your blood pressure rise. It also makes your blood more likely to clot. That's what anger does to our Bible, to our body. So when our teaching text says a tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot, the Bible is not being dramatic or speaking metaphorically here. It's saying anger can cause damage to your body. Second, it affects your mind. The first part of our text, it says, whoever is slow to anger, what do they have? Great understanding. But he who has a hasty temper, what does he do? He exalts folly. You ever flown off the handle? And when you cooled off, you thought to yourself, man, I feel like an idiot. Well, it's not because you felt like an idiot. You were one. Because when you get angry, here's what happens. You enter into a zone of distortion. A zone of distortion. And when you're angry, you have a distorted view of yourself, of others, and of the whole situation. You actually are not seeing things clearly. And so the wisdom you possess, which was found to mean slow to anger, that's out the window, and now anger has taken the wheels, and it likes to grip it tight, and it likes to go fast and hard, and doesn't use its blinker. Because you're not seeing things clearly. And this is why when we make decisions based on anger, we look back and go, I don't even act like that. That's not me. That's not who I am. Why did that happen? It's because you were in the zone of distortion, and your anger caused you to not see things as they actually were. Third, and this might be the most dangerous one, is that anger will affect your will. Proverbs 19:19. A hot-tempered person must pay the penalty. But then listen to this part. Rescue them, and you'll do it again. Because when you allow consistent anger, it has the potential to destroy your will. And the reason why is because of its addictive properties. Tim Keller says, of all the emotions, anger is the most like an addictive substance. And we know this to be true because anger is that emotion we tend to justify. And we will justify our anger a lot more when it goes awry than when other emotions do the same thing, which is exactly what you do with an addiction. So when someone's addicted, whether it's a substance, pornography, social media, whatever, when they're not willing to face that addiction head on, what do? They turn and they will justify it. And the same is true of anger. When we don't deal with our anger, it is dynamite to our will. That analogy, what does that mean? It means it's going to break down our will. Our will does not have the same strength that it once had, and we will begin to justify our anger. We'll say things like, they deserved it. I was wronged. That shouldn't have happened. I was tired. The list just goes on and on. We begin to justify anger. Now, I think what I'm about to share is where probably most people tend to miss out. And it's this. Most of our anger is not lashing out. Majority of anger is not lashing out. Anger is not primarily you lashed out, you yelled, you punched a hole in the wall, you threw your shoe at the TV because Caleb Williams wasn't the Bears quarterback you thought he was going to be. You know there's some, real super Pentecostal pastor in Chicago going, it's the second coming, Caleb Williams is here. But it's not. That's not really the primary way that anger shows itself. And so some of you might be thinking, well, I would never do any of those things, therefore I'm not angry. But that is just one actually kind of small type of anger. It's not the most common. Anger is far more diverse, but it's also far more deceptive than we think. And so I want to move through a few common types of anger. First, and this might be one of the most common, is chronic anger. And this is when someone has an ongoing, just kind of generalized resentment of other people, or just an ongoing generalized frustration at circumstances or situations, or it could turn inward and be anger towards themselves. And you've probably met people like this, or you work with people like this, or if you're sitting next to them, just wink at me real quick. No. But it's that person who just can't seem to see anything right about some person or about a situation, about a circumstance. And this is true whether they are, followers of Christ or not followers of Christ. There's just this sense of going, no, there's always out to get me. Someone's scheming, you fill in the blank. That's actually chronic anger. There's judgmental anger. And this is the type of anger. Usually it's a sense of perceived, keyword, injustice, or it's someone else's quote-unquote shortcoming. Shortcoming, And then there's overwhelmed anger. When we feel that a circumstance is beyond our control, that a circumstance is not fair. And so we feel frustrated, and we begin to justify why we feel frustrated. And then a very common anger, of course, is passive-aggressive, where we will avoid direct confrontation. It's often expressed through sarcasm, silence, could be a kind of a veiled mockery, procrastination. And then in its most extreme form, it can become contempt. There's retaliatory anger, like when we respond, how we respond when we're wrong, when we're hurt. There's self-abuse anger, and this is more rooted in shame, that we feel hopeless, humiliated, and so we internalize this into negative self-talk. And for some of us, we would never talk to other people the way we talk to ourselves. And that's going to be a good place to start. And then, of course, when we think about anger, it's the volatile anger, where it just kind of comes out of nowhere, that impulsive desire to throw the shoe at the TV. Now, there are many different types of anger, and the odds are you probably find yourself relating to a few of them. And if you don't, ask your spouse, and they'll tell you which ones. And over time, if not dealt with, your anger becomes more and more addictive, and we begin to pacify and justify our anger more. But when you choose to justify your anger, you are also simultaneously choosing not to level up. Lastly, anger will wreak havoc on your community. Because when you get angry, you begin to throw words around like weapons. Proverbs 18:21, it says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." And there's that last line, "and those who love it will eat its fruits." Your words have power. They can do good, but they can also be incredibly destructive. And if we were to right now put you into an MRI scanner, and we were taking a video of kind of the neurological changes that were happening in your brain, and we flash negative words for 1 second, no more, 1 second, we would see a sudden release of dozens and dozens of stress-producing hormones, chemicals that would immediately disrupt the functioning of your brain. And that's just seeing negative words for 1 second. But imagine what happens when, in anger, you begin to weaponize your words against those around you. Because when we're angry and we weaponize our words, here's the potential of what we're doing. That we could cause neurological damage to those around us. That we're causing emotional damage to those around us. Our angry words can wound and even destroy relationships. Because angry words are like emotional grenades that will devastate the intimacy and the depth that is found in love. And your relationships will never be as fruitful as they could be if you have a consistent habit of throwing angry, emotional grenades. And every time we justify this anger, we are saying to those around us, intimacy, depth, love, it's not worth it to me. I would rather justify my addiction. And I realize this is a tough conversation, but going back to our beach, if I had the opportunity to sit with you, this is one of the things I would want to talk about. So that's the first thing. Second, and this will be a bit perplexing at first, anger has a basic goodness. Anger is a good emotion. Let's kind of sit with that for a bit. Listen to this verse, very well-known verse from James, chapter 1, verse 19. It says, "Know this, my beloved brothers and sisters, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." It doesn't say no anger, it says slow to anger. Because the ideal in the Bible is not no anger. Like, we don't see that represented. In fact, when we do hear that, that really is a false perception of meekness. And the ideal in the Bible is not raging anger. That is built on a false perception of human autonomy. The biblical precedent is to be slow to anger. In fact, it would be a sin to never get angry. Think about that. That there are things that should cause a slow anger to rise in us. This is anger's basic goodness. There are things in the world and in your life that you should be angry about. Ephesians, echoing James, says, be angry, but don't sin. Like, sometimes we should be angry. Why? Because God is. Again and again, the Bible says God is slow to anger. He tells Moses, I'm the God slow to anger. Now, when we say God is angry, there is a false narrative we need to deal with. Because even when I say that, some of you probably picture this view of your mind of God being this angry cosmic father. But that picture is built on man's imperfect anger and not on God's perfect anger. And there's a really big difference because we don't have the mental models or the capacity to really perceive the depth of the anger of God. Because our models are going to be built on what we've seen and what we've done. But when we think about God as angry, that is totally rooted in his perfect love. And anger is a very important part of love. Because to say you're loving, but you're never angry, means you're not loving, you're just indifferent. And to love means at times to be angry. If I see my wife or my daughters threatened in any way, I'm going to be angry. I'm going to do something about it. That is a good anger. And Tim Keller puts it like this. He says, anger is love in motion towards a threat of something you love. And this can serve as a bit of a litmus test. If you want to know what you really love, look at what you defend. Because what you defend reveals what you love. And so when the Bible says God is angry all the time, it is because he loves and adores you. Now, he is angry at the sin in the world that is destroying his relationship that he has with you. He's not angry at you, he is angry for you. And that's the good news, that the God of this universe does not look at you with angry eyes, but is angry at the sin around you. See, understood correctly, anger has a basic goodness. And I get it, some of us, like, we grew up in homes where, we were told to suppress our anger. Others, we were told to get in the octagon and unleash our anger. Yet the Bible presents neither view. Rather, it says be slow to anger. So last, why does anger go awry? And it goes awry when our emotions are distorted. So God created emotions. He has emotions. But when our emotions are distorted, that is when issues rise. See, God is a very emotional God. And some of you need to hear that because too often we think of God as being stoic. And the reason we tend to think that is because we have elevated one aspect of God's nature above the others. And so one of the attributes of God is his immutability. It means his unchanging nature. And so what has happened is we have elevated this attribute, immutability, unchanging nature, against all the others. And we've done the same thing when we say God is love. Well, that's not true. He's a lot of things. He is love, but it's a part of his essence. It's not the whole. And when we elevate one attribute of God above others, we always end up in error. So because we tend to overemphasize God being unchanging, we have a hard time understanding God is emotional because emotions, at least in our mind, they create change in us. But if God is a perfect God, that implies his emotions are perfect. And they wouldn't conflict with him being unchanging. His unchanging nature relates to his sovereign decrees, his perfection. And if he has holy emotions, perfect emotions, then they can coexist in his perfect, unchanging nature. So God is an emotional God, and we are made in his image. However, I know what your mom told you, you're not perfect. And so our emotions can get distorted. And Tim Keller tells us there are three ways that our anger gets distorted. And it revolves around the unique relationship anger has with love. And so we'll look at these real briefly. And the first is this: the cause. The cause. What is the cause of our disordered love that led to anger? So as an example, why do we get so angry if we get snubbed? Why do we get so angry if someone cuts in front of us at Publix? It's because of disordered love. When we get slighted, we should be upset. Someone cuts in front of you, you should be upset. That's a normal emotion. But when we're steaming about it, and you're in the back of the line texting your wife going, I can't believe it, that is disordered love. Or if we're more upset that we didn't get that job, our plans didn't work out, they canceled, our team didn't win. If we're more upset about those things than we are about the genocide that is happening in the world, that is a disordered love. And so the first way our love gets disordered, it's related to the cause. What is causing this anger inside of me? What has created this anger? Is this anger just, or is it a disordered love? And you only find that out when you are slow to anger. Second is the proportion of our anger. So when Carissa and I were early in our marriage, we had a 4-pound Chorky. Some of you are thinking, what is that, a house rat? More or less. Yeah. More or less, yes. And he was not the sharpest tool in the shed, we'll put it that way. And so we tried and we tried and we tried to get him potty trained. No matter what, it just didn't seem to work. And so we would typically find out he had made a mess. And how do you find out? Well, normally because you stepped in it. And so he would get like no Baxter and smacked on the head. What some of you thinking, how dare you hit your dog? That's ordered love. Now here's what disordered love would do. Would pick up the dog, and throw him in the pool. That is disordered love, because that proportion is over the top. That proportion of anger, it went way too far. And so the challenge with anger, it's knowing the line when you go too far. And most often it's going to relate to the proportion of your anger. And again, unrighteous anger, always quick, never slow. And it's always over the top. Lastly, and if you don't mind coming up, make me sound more spiritual. Would you cue the lights down so you can see my tears? But lastly is the goal. The goal. Loving anger always desires to do one singular thing: to make a surgical strike at the issue. That is the only thing loving anger wants to do, is to make a surgical strike at the issue. When you have a doctor operating on you, what do you want? You want him to address only the issue, nothing else that's going on inside your body. Like if you're going in to get your appendix removed, you don't also want to be missing a lung or something else when you get out. Well, the same is true in dealing with our anger. The goal is always, how can I make a surgical strike at the issue? This is what ordered love and righteous anger is all about. Because here's what we do in disordered love. We don't go after the problem, we go after the person. Because we want vengeance. We want justification. We want to see them hurt like we hurt. We want blood. That's disordered love. But in ordered love, there's always this desire to make a tactical, surgical strike on the issue. There can be reconciliation, that there can be healing, and the goal ultimately is that there will be more depth and love in this relationship. So I want to end our beach chat by asking you a question. And it's a question I want you to think about now in this moment, but I ask that you would also think about this question this week. And here's the question. What would unchecked anger look like in your life over the next 25 years? What would unchecked anger look like over the next 25 years?